This CyCast is provided to you by the Iowa State Letterwinners Club, bridging the gap between legend and legacy by engaging in our past to invest in our future.
We have a great guest today in our latest CyCast, and it's a former Iowa State baseball player, Curt Kaufman. And Curt played baseball at Iowa State in 1976 and 1977, and he has an incredible story on how he made it to the big leagues. And he ended up making the major leagues in 1982. He played 2 years for the Yankees and 2 years for the California Angels. And Curt is a member of our Iowa State Letterwinners Club, and he'll be back in September for our baseball reunion. And today we're excited to have Curt here with us. Thanks, Curt, for joining us.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So let's start from the early in your career, Curt. You played high school baseball in Harlan, Iowa.
Correct.
And you're from Westphalia. How did you get recruited to Iowa State, and were you getting looked at from a bunch of schools at that time in 1975?
The scouting back then wasn't near like it is now. Now you don't have too many slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
I had one scout look at me. Can't think of his name. He's with the Cincinnati Reds, and he basically told me, "You need to go to college and put on about 30 pounds."
So you picked Iowa State, and Claire Ryerson was the head coach at the time. Cap Tim had just retired. What are some of your favorite memories of playing in Cap Tim Field? It was pretty early structure at the time. I think it was built in early 1970. But what were some of your favorite just memories of playing at Cap Tim Field?
Oh, there was quite a few. We had a great freshman class that came in, and a great upperclassmen, so we got along really well. But my freshman year, that February, we went to Hawaii as our spring trip, which was pretty special.
Yeah, who'd you play there?
Yes, but we came out of the armory off of concrete floors and stuff and wooden mounds, and we went over to Hawaii where they're playing outside year round, and we went 1-7. And all the games were like 2-1, 3-2, and very close games. But you got to play outside in order to compete with somebody who has. That's the advantage of college baseball with the SEC and all these Southern conferences. Yes, coaches can't be with them, but you have senior-led practices, things like that, so they can still get out on the field.
Yeah. Well, and tell me about Claire Ryerson. He was your head coach, and then also Jerry McNerney was kind of an assistant coach for you guys when you were in school. And Jerry played in the big leagues for 9 years, and you ended up having a really great relationship with him because you ended up working with him later in the major leagues.
Yes. Claire was very smart baseball-wise. I just lost my feed. There we go. My laptop timed out.
Okay, you're good. I can see it.
But anyway, we all got along very good. He was a very good communicator with the players, which, especially you get up into the professional ranks, you got to be a very good communicator.
Yeah.
And he was very good in college already. Jerry was the quiet one that sat in the background, but extremely knowledgeable. And being a catcher, it seems like catchers make great managers. They see the field, everything's in front of them.
Yeah.
I had a couple good managers that were catchers down the road at some point, but my freshman year, we had really a good team with the upperclassmen. It was us, Oklahoma, and Missouri in the Big 8 tournament that were undefeated. Then in the luck of the coin flip, we had to play Oklahoma, and we got Keith Kangas was starting that game. He was a left-handed pitcher. I was a freshman. He was a sophomore, so he was 1 year older, and he was really throwing well that game, and we were right in that game, and then he hurt his arm during that game, and then once they pulled him out, they pulled away. They beat us like 5-2, something like that. And then Missouri, I think Oklahoma made the World Series that year.
Yeah.
Missouri was a hitting machine. They my sophomore year, I had a great start, and they gave me quite a rude awakening. Didn't have too good of a game. But anyway, we, at that point, we played 63 games that year, and we ended up 31-32. But Big 8 was a bear. We played like I said, we started out 1-7 in Hawaii.
Yeah.
But, we really had a good team, good year. Don McClanahan had like 63 RBIs. It just, all different facets of the game, we were pretty strong.
Yeah. Well, then 1977 was your sophomore year, and you basically led Iowa State in every pitching category: wins, strikeouts, ERA. Had a great year. Kind of talk us through on like why you had to leave Iowa State, because you had some, on the family situation back at home, right?
Yes. Yeah, it was one of those deals. It became, you never want to go to college just for a sport.
Yeah.
And then there was so many other things involved at that time that it was just a decision that I made that I would try to get back into the game at some later point, which I did. But I wish things could have been a little different, but that's just the way it was.
Yeah. So you went back to your family farm. And,
Yes.
Yep. And then basically you started playing at a town team, right?
Yeah.
And it was
Iowa Western League.
Iowa Western League, in which I know that a lot of people right now don't even know what the heck that is. But back in the 70s, there's a lot of little town teams and very competitive. And basically, Curt, tell us the story. You kind of started maturing, and your velocity started getting higher. How did you start getting notice from the scouts at that time when you're out of college, but you're just playing town baseball?
Well, first of all, Iowa Western League was a very, very good league. I mean, I think that league would have actually measured up to any summer baseball collegiate league,
Yeah.
around the country. We played Clarinda A's and all these teams, Beatrice Bruins. Sioux City had a Saints back then. We played them all. And it was interesting because most of the players, well, a lot of them were ex-college and stuff, but most of them were just farmers.
Yeah.
And but you got to understand the love of the game back then in that league was incredible. Little town of Westphalia, which was probably 150 people, but our parish is a Catholic community. We were probably 500-600 or so, but we had 2 teams in it. So nowadays, with the family farm dwindling, you don't see. I mean, I drove through the countryside here last summer, and it was like, I think there used to be a farmstead there. They're all gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so now they don't even field the team anymore. But anyway, it had been well, first of all, in 78, that first year I was out, I had a summer of putting up grain bins. You talk about physical.
Yeah.
We put up 108 of them that summer. And I was one of them that hung sheets all day. And man, I went from about 180 to 195. And I was as strong as a bull. And it was a complete physical exercises, so to speak.
Sure.
So you became athletically strong instead of like just doing biceps or triceps or whatever. And that's when my fastball really jumped.
And how much speed did you gain, Curt? How much speed did you gain from college, like your last year in college to then, you think, if you had to guess?
Probably 5 to 6 mile an hour. The hardest I ever knew that I threw was 98.
Okay.
But I didn't live on 98. I was a 92, 93 guy. And back then, pitching was a lot different. You hit your spots, you change levels, you change speeds. Now guys are trying to throw it through the wall, and I looked it up the other day. Of the 360 pitchers that are now active in the major leagues, there was 126 that have had or currently had Tommy John surgery.
Yeah.
When I played, there was 2, Tommy John and Don Ossie. It's the only 2 I know of. So your arm's just not meant to throw 98 consistently. It's not a normal action, so to speak.
Sure.
But anyway, getting back to McNertney in 79 February called me and wanted me to come down for a tryout in Florida. And I tried to get ready, and I was playing basketball then, so I was in a different kind of conditioning, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it didn't really work out then. So then 79 summer, we always started that league right around Mother's Day. He called me up in late June and asked me how I was throwing. And I said, actually, I'm throwing pretty good right now. That's when, after 78, my fastball was good. I was 10-0 in this league. I threw 100 innings already by the 4th of July. And so they sent a scout to Westphalia to see me. And I played with the White Sox, which was a Westphalia team, against the Red Sox, which was a Westphalia team. And I had never beat them. And that day, it was kind of a cool, wet. It had rained earlier, and the mound was a little wet, so my front foot just slid a little bit all the time on it. And it was a pretty steep mound, which is good if you can get used to it. But I walked like 5 that day. I had to throw 150 pitches, but I beat him 1-0. And he was there, the scout, it was Roger Olson. He came through a guy out of Kansas who sent him up, Russ Sehan. And they talked to me a little bit after the game, and I kept it hush-hush because I didn't want the players to know what was going on, because then they press and the game gets a little bit out of character. So it was pretty hush-hush, the whole thing. But so 2 days later, they flew me out to Columbus, Ohio, where their AAA franchise was, and Stan Williams watched me throw there for him, and then they signed me the next day. So only out in New York.
So how quick did you sign that when they told you they were going to offer you the contract?
I signed it right away.
So now you're in the minor leagues, and you're in the Yankees farm system. You pretty much made the big leagues pretty quick. I mean, within 2-3 years, right?
Yes, signed in 79 and got that call up September of 82. Yeah. But I was an all-star in every league I played in.
Yeah.
But, I was a little bit more developed than some of the kids, especially the first year, rookie ball, already having 100 innings under my belt, and I turned 22 that summer.
Yeah.
So I kind of had that advantage. Then the next year I started out in the Florida State League, which was full season A, and done real well. And then they called me up in July to Double-A. And every time I went up, to the next level, it was a new adjustment. Everything's a little different. Hitters are a little better. You got to pitch a little bit more. If you make a mistake, they'll let you know. But I started out a little tough in Double-A. And then I played there in 80, the rest of 80. And then 81, they changed me to be a reliever. Otherwise, I started, Oneana in rookie ball, I was a reliever because I got there late. So they just threw me in. And there's a whole story there. Oh, now I got a cat jumping on me.
That's okay.
But, and I'll get into that later, but my first game was quite entertaining. But 81, they asked me if I wanted to relieve, and I said, sure, because it's fun. You're in there, 9th inning, games on the line. Yeah. If you can't get your adrenaline going for that, you're not going to get it going. And then 82, I got promoted to AAA, and had a manager there. But for the life of me, I can't think of his name. I can picture him. But he was old school, where you might throw 7 innings, you might start a game, you might close out the 9th. So it's an adjustment when you don't know what really your job is, so to speak. Yeah. And then at the end of the year, I got called up to New York. And it was funny because it was Mattingly and I drove up together in my car, and they laughed at us like, you drove here? into the Bronx. There was no GPS then.
Yeah.
Donnie had the map. He was the navigator, and I drove.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got there. We left about 7 a.m, got there at 3 p.m. And actually, the powers to be, the brass, was kind of mad at us because they thought, well, you can't play tonight because you drove all day. You're going to be mentally exhausted.
Yeah.
It really wasn't that bad, but I think that within the first couple of days, I got in a game. And of course, the first game I get in was against the Milwaukee Brewers, the Brew Crew, and did all right. And then it's like a day later is when I got my first win in the major leagues, was against the Brewers. My first strikeout was Robin Yount, which was pretty neat.
But, and I was going to ask you about that, Curt, because history-wise, that Brewers team was the team that made the World Series that year in 1982. Yep. Very good team. You had Paul Molitor, Robin Yount, Cecil Cooper. You could name them. Ted Simmons, I think, was their catcher, but
Gordon Thomas.
Gorman Thomas could hit some home runs. But what was your feeling like when that first time that you had to face major league hitting? What was that feeling like?
Well, the first time I got to call in the bullpen, we were at home in Yankee Stadium, and the phone rang, and they said, "Kaufman, you're up." And man, there's a difference between being nervous and scared. And I was scared. So you shut down physically when you're scared.
Yeah.
And especially when the pitcher who was throwing in the game getting in trouble was Ron Guidry. And I'm like, what the hell am I going to throw that he hasn't already thrown?
Yeah.
But he got out of the inning, and I got to sit down and think about it a little bit. And next inning I got in, and I was a lot better then. But the one thing, it's kind of interesting, the one thing I remember more than anything, and I can't for the life of me remember the announcer's name in Yankee Stadium back then, but when he announced my name, he had that voice. It was unbelievable voice. And when he announced my name, I'm like, man, this is pretty cool,
Yeah.
Pretty good crowd that night. I did all right. And, then I was nervous, so your adrenaline works for you instead of being scared and you go the other way.
Yeah.
But it's very special. It's something you'll always remember.
Yeah, and then you got the win 2 days later, and you came in relief, obviously. It was a 9-8 win, but, what do you remember the circumstances of how you entered the game, or do you remember any of that when you got your first career victory in the big leagues?
I don't remember who I followed.
Yeah.
But I remember I gave up a base hit to somebody, and I don't remember that, but it's a bunting situation. And Steve Balboni, another teammate of mine, was playing first base. And I threw a high fastball, which is what, if you can throw a four-seamer, you can get it to ride a little bit. It's a great pitch for a bunt. Put it up in the zone, and they will pop it up sometimes. Instead of throwing a slider or something like that, which is easier to get down. So I threw a high fastball. Sure enough, he popped it up, and Balboni caught it and doubled him up off first to get out of the inning, and then we scored in the bottom of the ninth to win it.
Gotcha.
One thing I remember after that, too, Roy Smalley was playing shortstop, and he made sure to get the baseball and give it to me. That's cool.
And I take it you still have it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, good for you. Well, 1983, the next year, you got called up again and played for the Yankees, and your manager was Billy Martin that year.
Yes.
I'm sure you have some stories about just about playing Billy ball. How was he as a manager?
He was more a player's manager who's been around a while.
Yeah.
He said pitchers were non-athletes, and he didn't really like rookies all that much. They had to prove themselves to him, which is fair. I don't agree with the pitchers aren't athletes. It's part of it. But, it was interesting, but obviously he's a very smart baseball man.
Yeah.
The thing I remember first about 83, I got called up early August. Excuse me. And it was Saturday game of the week, where they still had I think it was NBC game of the week or CBS game of the week. And Saturday afternoon, 1:00 game. And I got in the game early. I threw 5 or 6 innings. But it's Bobby Mercer retirement day, where they honored him. and there was 55,000 there. So that was really pretty special. And I threw wells against Detroit, who was very good.
Yep.
In 83 and 84, they won it. So, but the thing about that day is, and you got to understand, being new to any league, hitters don't know you. Pitchers, if you pitch, you've got the advantage. So having said that, I struck out Kirk Gibson 3 times, and he he couldn't figure me out,
Yeah.
So that's a fair statement. It takes time. And, later that year he got me, was actually in 84. I threw him a changeup and he hit one out on me in Detroit, but our left fielder was camped under it to catch it. But the upper second, the upper, whatever you would want to call it, in the stands overhung the field. So
the old Tiger Stadium, you're saying. Yeah. The upper deck was like really close to, I know what you're talking about.
But I talked to him a few times, and he said, God, I can't figure you out. And I said, well, that's good.
Yeah.
But after that game, I don't know if I slept wrong or what, but I had pinched a nerve in my neck.
Okay.
And I missed. They sent me back down because of that. And I actually, that same year before this, I got called up around the 4th of July because Guidry hurt his back. But when you make a roster move off a AAA team, it has to be for 10 days. So Guidry wasn't hurt as bad, so I never got activated. But I was there to see Righetti's no-hitter against Boston, which was kind of...
And that was 83. That's right. That was 83, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Speaking of, so you're in the Yankees. You're obviously a reliever. You had Goose Gossage on your team, correct?
Correct.
What was he like when you're in the bullpen? And did as a future Hall of Famer, one of the best relievers in obviously baseball history? What was he like for advice? Did he give you any advice or anything like that when you were just coming up?
Oh yeah, he was as good a guy as you could possibly imagine. A lot of those guys, Guidry, a lot of those guys were hunters, and I liked to in the off season too. So we kind of had that thing, mutual like. And Gossage, the one thing I always noticed about him, this is still where he could throw over 100.
Yeah.
And he was funny, prankster, all that in the bullpen. As soon as they called his name, completely flip a switch.
Yeah.
He is so intense. It was pretty neat. And later on when I became that short reliever more often, put it better. But Gossage, and after the 83 season, they told me that, I didn't need to prove myself in the minor leagues anymore, so forth. That with Gossage there, there was no need for me to get stuck back in AAA. But getting back to after that game when I pinched a nerve in my neck, I missed almost 3 weeks in the minor leagues because of that. And finally, I got it to where I could throw again. And it was, I'm sure you heard of Donnie Cooper, pitching coach for the White Sox for a lot of years. He was a good friend of mine. And he was with the Toronto organization then in Syracuse. And it was us two going for the league lead in the saves. And I got him the last week of the season. I had 25, he had 23.
Okay.
And we still talk about that. It's kind of funny. But then the winter meetings of 83, they traded me to the Angels for Tim Foley.
Yeah.
So then I became an Angel.
And then in 1984, you were with the California Angels. And
yes.
You ended up actually getting your first and only career start with the Angels. Yes. And how did that happen? How did a reliever all of a sudden decided that you're actually going to start? How did that happen?
We needed another starter, and they thought they would try me as a starter, but it was kind of, Johnny McNamara was our manager, and he was one of those guys, again, that you might throw 7 innings, you might throw 1 inning, which was hard because your body likes a routine. and there's no routine to that. That was the nice thing about '83. Johnny Oates was the manager, and he was excellent. I threw usually just the ninth inning, a couple times to get work in. I would throw a couple innings, but I threw 50 games and had 78 innings or something like that. So getting into '84, they tried me as a starter against Seattle. Now, I always remember that I kind of reverted back to when I started, how I would warm up and do this, that, and the other. Because if you watch, starters have a routine, and everybody has a routine of how they get ready, both physically and mentally for a game. And I threw way too much in the bullpen. So I should have approached it as a reliever, and just, I could throw 15 pitches in the bullpen. You get 8 when you go out on the mound, and I was ready. I should have approached it that way, because I threw 80 some pitches that day, plus the bullpen, and I was pooped.
Yep. Well, and so in '84, you had some amazing teammates also on that team with obviously Reggie Jackson, Rod Carew. What were those guys like as teammates when you got to the Angels?
Oh, Reggie was always needling everybody, and he had a kind of a where people thought he was not a nice guy. But you know what? If you watched him and how the typical fans treated him, he'd be going out before the game to get loose, run sprints, or do whatever, stretch. People are asking for autographs, and he said, well, not right now, and then he got the reputation for being an ass, which was so unfair, because he was getting ready. And I think it hardened him a little bit. So he had the appearance like he wasn't a nice guy, but he was a very, very nice guy. Carew, he taught me how to play box rummy on one of the first plane trips we had. $500 later, I learned how to play box rummy. And I told Rod, I can't afford that. You can. So we lowered the stakes. I ended up getting it back in the long run, but I have nothing but great things to say about Carew. He was there was a day game I was pitching in Anaheim, and there was a ground ball hit to the hole just off, and he didn't get there. He just didn't react to it, and it went out to right field. They threw it into him, and he walked it to the mound, and he apologized to me. And I'm like, Rod, you don't have to apologize to me. You're a future Hall of Famer, and that's the type of guy he was. I mean, he didn't have to apologize to me. But that's something I always remember.
Well, who was the toughest hitter you ever faced? If you had to say, who was the guy that you was like, this guy is just, I can't get this guy out?
Boston Red Sox lineup.
Well, and obviously, Boggs was there by then.
Boggs was there. Jim Rice.
Dwight Evans.
I never did throw against Yastrzemski. Never faced him. And, as a pitcher or a hitter, you always want to face the best. Doesn't mean you're going to fare well, but it's part of competing, And I faced Brett, and I faced that Baltimore lineup back when they had all those. And it was maybe not fun at the time, but it was fun to compete against them. You always have hitters that tend to own you, but then you might own a Hall of Famer. It's just weird how that works.
It is. Well, just like you said about Kirk Gibson, where you had a great success over him.
I did well against Cal Ripken Jr., but there was a catcher for Cleveland who faced him in the minor leagues quite a bit, Jerry Willard. I just couldn't get him out. And he was a good hitter. It wasn't like, he wasn't that good. He was. But ironically, in '84, I threw several games in a row, a couple against the Orioles and somebody before that. And then the Yankees came to town, and I threw 2 games against them, and all in about 6 days. And the second day, I threw 2 innings, 7th and 8th against them. And after the game, I met a couple of the guys in a local Mexican restaurant. And they said, what happened to your fastball? I said, my arm's beat. I'm
Yeah.
tired. Well, we went on a road trip after that to Cleveland, and I threw a game, seventh and eighth. In the bottom of the eighth inning, we took the lead in that game, and Jerry Willard came up with 1 out, guy on base, and I mean, there's this guy again, and I threw a good changeup to him and got him to pop up, but somewhere in that motion, I stopped short and pulled the teres minor muscle in the back of my shoulder, and it's just like you hear the typical when somebody pulls a muscle, it's like a match burning in there, and that's exactly what it was. And next hitter, there was 2 outs, was Pat Tabler, an old teammate of mine, good hitter, right-handed hitter. And I threw well against him, and it's almost like I was scared to let it go, and throw too hard, but I hit my spots perfect and got him, struck him out. Well, I went out there for the top of the ninth. I couldn't get it to home plate. I couldn't even get it there. And so I got one of many quarter zone shots. It's a grind. And they say you can get 12 quarter zone shots in your career. Well, I had my 12.
Yeah.
So knees, elbow, shoulder, you name it.
Yeah.
But so I missed 3 weeks there. But at least I got Jerry Willard out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in 1985, you actually had your first Topps card, baseball card with Fleer. And I'm just curious, as a collector myself, how many times do you get that card sent to you in the mail to get it signed?
I still probably get 10 to 20 a month because that 85 set is a very valuable set.
It is.
And they want everybody to sign it. The last I seen, my card was worth $1.20 or something. So, but I got included in that whole thing. And I still have quite a few of those cards laying around because they threw in, here's a story for you. All those spring training, big league spring training camps. So that would have been 81, 82, 83, 84, 85. The baseball cards, Topps, Don Russ, Fleer would all come in. They'd throw packets, 1,000 cards in your locker. I took them all home. Didn't even open all the packets. Mom threw them away.
Oh boy!
Can you imagine?
That happens so often. But But how cool does that make you feel when you get one of your cards in the mail? I mean, you obviously think it's really neat to sign them and send it back, don't you?
Yeah, every time I walked to the bullpen before a game, I would sign autographs.
Yeah.
It's you wouldn't be there if it wouldn't be for the fans.
Yeah.
And I always took the time, and I like talking to the fans. As you got better and more well known, it's harder because they'd never let you go.
Yeah.
Now they have a lot of restrictions. You can't walk down there and everything, unless you got a seat down there. So it's not quite as bad, but no, it's quite. It makes you feel good, but it's actually an honor.
Yeah. Yeah. When did you know that it was time to hang it up?
I ended the 84 year very well. They used me quite a bit in tough situations. It was us in Kansas City in the playoff run. It was one of us two. And I got to throw a couple of games in Kansas City. I actually took a loss down there in like the 13th inning or something. And second last series of the year. Then we went to Texas, and I got to see Mike Witt throw his perfect game. So I seen Rigetti throw a no-hitter and Witt throw a perfect game, which is pretty special. I don't know how many people can say that.
Yeah, yeah.
But then 85 spring training, I played basketball all winter. We had a great team. We traveled all over and played basketball. I loved basketball. Never told the Angels or Yankees that because they probably would have frowned. Plus, I skied every winter too, and I still ski, but snow ski. And I went out a week early in 85, and as Ron Romanek and we were roommates a lot with the Angels, and I played a lot of racquetball, and so did Ron, he said. So I said, well, let's go play racquetball to get in shape. And he goes, I'll spot you 19 points. And I'm like, what? That means I have to score 2 points to beat you. He goes, that's all right. Well, he was the Class A champion in Seattle, and
Okay.
have you ever played racquetball?
I have, and it's harder than people think.
Well, have you ever been introduced into ceiling play?
Well, no, I haven't.
Yeah, well, he introduced me into ceiling play, and he had hit it off the ceiling, hits the front wall, comes
Yeah.
back, and it pins you on the back wall.
Yeah.
And dang, that was difficult. But anyway, somewhere in that spring, I noticed my elbow started bothering me, and it bothered me a little bit way back in '83 when I threw a lot. I'd get fatigue in my tricep. So then '84, I felt it a part of the year, but then '85, it was really starting to bark at me. So they checked me out. I had Dr. Job look at me and all that, and they never found anything, but it just really bothered me. If I did something a certain way, oh man, it was just like somebody stuck a knife in my elbow. Well, they sent me to Edmonton for rehab, a place where we got snowed out for a week in May.
Yeah.
Beautiful country, though. Oh my,
Yeah.
it is really neat up there. But so I ended up being there the whole year because I just couldn't throw through it. '86, I went out to see the Celtics, Bruins, Red Sox doctor, Dr. Pappas, and he found it right away. I had bone chips on a bone spur. So they basically, back then, they didn't scope you yet. So they basically dislocated my elbow for 4 hours and cleaned it all out.
Okay.
But in that process, I lost that whip out front. So my fastball dropped all the way down to upper 80s, and I couldn't, by not finishing out front, my slider wasn't as good or nothing.
Yeah.
So then in '86, I missed the whole year '86, and I tried to come back '87 with the Orioles, and it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
So that's when I retired.
Yeah. And so when you got done, did you come back to Iowa right away?
Yes, I did. Orioles offered me a pitching coach job that year with their new rookie team, the short season A team.
Yep.
But I figured at that point, since 1975, I've been in baseball, 12 years. I thought I'd step away for a while.
Yep.
And with every intention of going back in some capacity, and I even scouted for a little bit, but then you have a family and kids and everything else, and it's hard to travel doing that with kids and that. So I never did go back.
Yeah. Well,
But as soon as I got back, I did play town team baseball again, though. I just didn't want to pitch much. I played shortstop, and
gotcha.
And after seeing and talking to all these good hitters, I actually became a pretty good hitter. I never was bad, but
Yeah.
with the Yankees in AA, we had some horrible trips from Nashville to Orlando and stuff like that. And it was always the same group and back. It was Mattingly, Kenny Baker, Brian Dayette, Showalter, Balboni. All of us would sit back there, Donnie Cooper, and we would talk baseball. And that was very fun. You learn a lot from both sides, pitching, hitting, and whatever. In 1980, Willie McGee was there yet, and a lot of great players. And it was fun just talking the game, and you learn a lot.
Sure.
Playing cards with Carew, you talk to him. And Mattingly was my roommate on the road a lot. So you talk. He had asked me how I'd pitch him, and I'd ask him how would he approach me, things like that, know.
Yep. Speaking of Don Mattingly, what's your thoughts of him not being in the Hall of Fame?
I think at some point, the voters need to understand that if he didn't hurt his back, and he hurt his back by doing that Nautilus machine where it's a torso turn, you grab it and you turn your torso, which obviously as a hitter you do, but he hurt his back doing it. And if he didn't hurt his back, there was no doubt in anybody's mind he'd have got 3,000 hits, which is usually the barometer, so to speak. No, I think and defensively, he was just amazing. He should be there. If not in the beginnings of it, then they could do that secondary one. He needs to be in.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that through the years that they do get him in. He was so fun to watch. Curt, you're a member of the ISU Letter Winners Club. Thank you, and we're so happy that you are. And And you're coming back to Ames early September for the first football game because there's a baseball reunion. How
Yes.
excited are you to reminisce with your old friends?
Oh, I've talked to a few of them already. Who's going to be there? A couple of guys last year weren't there, and then they're going to be there this year. And then I'm going to the Iowa State game there. I always go with my kids. I have 5 kids, and we all go there and tailgate. And what was that, about 4 years ago? It was supposed to chance of rain in the afternoon. We get there at
Oh, the
zero.
delay game. Yeah.
Yeah, the 0 dark 30 in the morning.
Yeah.
As soon as the sun starts rising, you look to the west, and you're like, oh my, that looks
Yeah.
pretty rainy, you know. Yeah, we ended up standing in 6 inches of water, and I had a generator running with the cord, and I'm like, oh, maybe we should probably shut that off.
Yeah.
So,
well,
but it's fun.
It's cool that you still follow Iowa State, and we're really happy. Curt, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us. Great stories, and we're really excited to see you here in about a month. So thanks
Yeah.
again for everything.
All right, thank you for having me.